Different's great, but being different for the sake of being different, I'm not a big fan of, right? If you just want to be different for the sake
technology
of it.
Technology, I would hide behind it.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes.
Because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives you.
All right, welcome everybody to the Master Connector Show. I'm Rob Genovesi, one of the co-hosts today. I want to thank you all for joining us here and hopefully joining us each week as we bring special guests to you, all about the idea of connecting, about being inspiring to people, teaching somebody something new, and giving a unique perspective on maybe a time-held belief or a new skill. Always want to bring value to you all here. I'm proud to be a part of this show and to be bringing you stuff every single week that is of value. And so what I want to talk about here is the Master Connector himself. If you're just tuning in for the first time, just a little background, Steve Spiro and I go back 27 years. We were both clueless way back when, two former shy guys, introverted by nature, who learned to connect with people, develop relationships, meet people wherever we went, which was a new concept for me. Steve became a master at this. He blew me away in this area, and he meets new people all the time. He's always connecting people. He's always building relationships. So help me bring to the Master Connector Show the Master Connector himself, Mr. Steve Spiro. What's up, Steve?
What's going on, Rob G? That is, it's crazy meeting strangers, man. When you're from New York, if you talk to strangers, they're going to shoot you or kidnap you. But fortunately, never got kidnapped and definitely didn't get shot at. So that was cool. I guess it helps having a couple of black belts, right?
Yeah. Well, you had that over me for sure. I mean, I remember we'd be out there just like meeting people wherever. And I tell you, I met some people. When I look back now, I'm thinking I took my life into my hands, talking to certain people, because you watch a lot of TV shows. You never know who's a hitman, who's a leg breaker.
Yeah. I remember one time I met a guy, he's a good friend of mine today, a guy named Dave. And he wasn't so terrible. We met at a soccer field. My nephew, the one and only time I went to see my nephew play soccer, and about 2.5 weeks later, he was in my home. So yeah, that was kind of risky,
You never know.
But anyway, I appreciate it. It was great having you on here, sir, as a co-host here. What's going on, friends? Steve Spiro, the Master Connector, coming at you live and directed. And listen, I'm gonna take you way back, okay? Back in the day. I want to give you a little bit of my backstory to give you some context here. So some of you guys know I was in the advertising industry. So I went to high school and college. I went to the High School of Art and Design in the New York City, and then went to Parsons New School for also advertising graphic design, and commuted to both schools. Didn't have the typical college experience or the high school experience, but it was wild. But got out, couldn't get a job, start a company, and had a very illustrious career. But after about 6 years, my partner and I closed the advertising company down. Our office, when we closed, it was on 20th and Madison. But anyway, long story short, I discovered there was a whole world of marketing and advertising companies in Fairfield County and Westchester County. And I got into that niche. And I remember working at a company in Norwalk, Connecticut, in East Norwalk. And it was a cool agency. They had a big fish tank, and they had like a pool table. And one of the accounts we were working on was Jose Cuervo. So I remember at 5 o'clock, right about 5, almost like 5:01, you'd hear the clanking of the pool table and the bzz of the blender. And what a cool experience! It was long, it was fun, it was crazy. I mean, it was long hours. In that world, you got a call at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and a client needed something at Monday at 9 a.m. It's like, okay, there goes your weekend. You're working all the way through. Sometimes we worked all the way through the night. Crazy stuff, but we loved it. We absolutely loved it. And and on the flip side, I've been in the corporate world as well, and the rules and the micromanaging. It's like now back in the advertising world, because we're going to talk a little bit about creative and creating environment and culture and so forth. But we got paid decent. It wasn't crazy. It was good amount, but it was a culture, and it was fun, and there was like a family, and I don't know. It it was a great experience, and we really felt like we were just doing stuff for the fun of it, not because it was something we had to do. We weren't working for a paycheck. We were working because we just enjoyed it, and it was just what we did. And so today's guest really has taken that culture that I'm talking about to another level. And so we're going to have a blast today. So if you're ready, for my co-host, my man, Mr. Rob G, to introduce our amazing guest, I want you to type in the hashtag right now. Put in hashtag Let's Go. And remember, we're LinkedIn participants. We're not LinkedIn lurkers. We only see a number. We know, okay, X number of people are showing or watching, but we don't know you unless you get in the comments. So this is the Master Connector Show. Yeah, show us where you're from, what country, what city, what state. You could say what you do, because we want you to connect with each other, right? This is a connector show, right? It's not a watching show. We want you connecting. So get in there. But I'll turn it over to you, sir, Rob G.
All right. Thanks, Steve. Hey, look, this is going to be a great show for you today because we got somebody who I'm actually really eager to hear from. Mandy Hoskinson is a marketing agency founder, community leader, and creative person. Her award-winning agency, Zolay, works with clients spanning B2B, B2C, SaaS, government, and creative industries. The social impact-focused agency also gives 20% of its work away pro bono, which is awesome. Mandy's also the president of the Social Media Club of Los Angeles and vice president of the Social Media Club Global. You can find her most digital places as @MediaMandy. Please welcome to the show, Ms. Mandy Hoskinson. Welcome, Mandy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Good to have you.
Show. Yeah, it's awesome. And I just want to, before we get into this, I want to just acknowledge we got Yolanda. Yolanda, great new picture. I love the picture on the profile. That's awesome. But glad you're here. And yeah, it's good. Yolanda is one of our loyal participants, as she mentions here, right? She's not a LinkedIn lurker. She is a participant, and we just appreciate you, Yolanda. I know there's a lot more on the show here watching, and just would encourage you to get in the comments. But yeah, we're excited to have you on here, Mandy. And so we want to talk about, of course, the show is about building award-winning culture. So we want to talk about culture. So type in hashtag culture community. And we're going to ask the question to Mandy, right? So how did you discover the importance of not assuming what your team wants, and how this mindset has contributed to Zolay's award-winning culture?
Yeah, I think I had a really similar experience to you, Steve. Also came from advertising. I also worked in entertainment, Fox, CBS, Olympics, Apple. And in those large places, I found that it was easy to get lost, and it was easy to not understand what my job even was. And it was also highly competitive. And so I also did not thrive in those environments. I was not a ladder climber. I wanted to love what I do, and I wanted to love who I worked with. And so that's why when I started my own company, I took everything I didn't like and tried to turn it on its head and make something I loved.
And listen, you know, we all know that, right? You know, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I can't say that was the case. You know, advertising was something I really enjoyed. I didn't love every piece of it, but it was definitely a lot more fun when you really enjoy something. It really makes it a lot easier. And when you're surrounded by people who also have that same love and joy, it makes the experience of working together even with that more greater. It's good stuff. But so let's move to the next topic here. Next question. So I want you to type in community hashtag treat. I know that sounds a little weird, right? But we're not talking about something to eat, but we're talking about treating people, right? Treating your team, right? So here, Mandy, can you share a specific instance where treating your team well, and I know you told me a little bit about, you know, giving soup money and, you know, self-care stipends and all that stuff. But you know, how it was a noticeable positive impact on their performance and or their well-being?
It's a great question. So I'll explain kind of what you said. So we have a tradition of sometimes when people are sick, not necessarily every time, but sometimes we'll send out soup money. So we send everybody $30 to spend on soup. The reason why I started doing this is that we have a lot of contractors. So this isn't necessarily someone who gets to receive health benefits from us. It's people who have chosen a different work format. So Soup Money is sort of a neutral, health positive message. It also tells people that we want you to spend time healing. And when you tell someone that you want them to spend time healing, you give them permission to actually do it. This is something that's very qualitative. It's hard to necessarily quantify, but people stay. And when people stay and when people heal, there's so much unseen commitment to the company. There's unseen actual healing, and there's unseen health that does come through with performance over time that I believe is happening, and my team tells me is happening, and the US Agency Awards believe is award winning. So that's us.
I got to chime in here because I love that you do that. And it's a very specific example of how you're helping people. And, you know, I spent 25 years in corporate America and experiencing everything from really toxic cultures to cultures that were really better, but I wouldn't say they were great. And a lot of corporations suffer from this. And I think one of the things that we have to look at is I believe, depending on what you look at the statistic, the things that employees want, that workers want from the company, top 5 doesn't include money. Usually it includes recognition for them as people, for what they contribute, for what they bring to the table, for who they are as people. Because people, you know, Steve and I heard this a long time ago, recognition, men die for it and babies cry for it. And it's the truth. People want to be recognized for their efforts. Yeah. And when you do simple things like that, you are humanizing everything you do and saying, this isn't a company. This is a group of people who love working together. I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty cool. It's amazing. And when you told me about the Soup Money, it just blew me away. And, you know, it's interesting, right? Because we're in a really, really I keep saying the word interesting, but we're just in a different place than we were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Today, it's a remote work environment. People are, you know, they're not together. So you lose some of that human aspect. And then you couple that with, like in your situation where you're working with 1099 private contractors, freelancers, where there's very little loyalty. And you told me that you actually have, you know, a very loyal approach, which is interesting. I think you told me a story the other day, yesterday, when we talked about how somebody gave you like a 9-month notice. They're so loyal and appreciative of the culture you're building. They said, hey, you know, I'm going to need to leave in 9 months, which a lot can happen in 9 months, including have a baby. But yeah, but anyway, it's crazy.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That is something, I think there's a lot, this toxicity that we discuss, there's a lot of different factors. We have a client, it's called Kahoot. It's a very large business to business and education technology company.
Gaming, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And they really thrived in the pandemic. They were part of this like huge ed tech bubble. And it's been a lot of fun working with them because they're Norwegian. And learning about how Norway tackles things has really spoken and reminded me that America is incredibly unique in our work culture. I would say we're sort of in the middle. Ray Dalio, the very famous investor, says that we're a retiring empire. So we are not necessarily in the height of our empire, but we're retiring, right? We don't have the hustle that we did necessarily in the beginning, but we haven't entirely stopped. But it's interesting because there's these kind of retired empires that do think about well-being. And I always try to think of balancing this like really awesome American hustle with this really interesting balance. In Norway, it's actually like countrywide that you give 3 months notice. And we had already had this notice culture and anyway, but you give 3 months notice. So when you hire someone in Norway, you will not get them for 3 months because they are going to transition at their previous company for 3 months. Also, maternity and paternity leave is inherited by the next company. So that, I mean, I think those two things are so incredibly healthy. And what I tell my team, we just did our annual meeting. So this comes at a really great time where one of the questions I asked that I got from a great book called The Great CEO Within that I just finished, fantastic book. He said, for one of your all hands or for regular feedback, ask, if you ran this company, what would you change? Specifically, he says, if you are CEO, what would you change? Because it's for It's for large tech companies, but this was so insightful. I had everybody submit in a Kahoot anonymously, and then they all get to vote on each other's ideas. And it was so insightful. But this notice thing, I always tell them, you're not hurting me. Like, this company isn't me. As much as I started it, it's us. Like, yes, I'm the face. Yes, I get credit. But at the end of the day, you have coworkers. And so when you leave, you hurt them. And so the sooner you tell us, the better we can transition you. The other part of being a great team member is documenting what you do and leaving. If you don't take vacations, we won't feel the hurt of knowing all the tiny things that you do. I took a lot of time off this year. It will end up being a total of 10 weeks, which is like wild. That includes our 2-week vacation that everybody gets starting on Monday. But I took a delayed honeymoon. I took another 2 delayed trips from the pandemic. And those were all things that I've held off for the 5 years that I built the company, and everyone knew. And so we spent the year preparing, what is Mandy's job and how do we get ready for her to be out? And now the company runs without me, because now everyone knows what they need. They've been educated. Everything is documented. And so interestingly, now the company gets to grow, because now I don't have to work in the company. I get to work on the company. That's what notice does. That's what documentation does. It achieves a lot.
Yeah. And it sounds like you've read the book, E-Myth Revisited, right?
Michael Gerber's E-Myth. Yeah.
E-Myth.
I'm not sure. I'll write it down.
Oh, yeah,
there you go. Because it talks it preaches that, right? Working on your business, not inside your business, right? Yeah. So that's great. I just want to acknowledge a couple people. I'm sorry. What are you gonna say, Mandy? Keep going. Go ahead.
Oh, if there's any business owners listening, Goldman Sachs has an awesome business program. It's generally a minimum of 500K revenue a year, but work up to it. And they've actually adjusted based on region. Our instructor in the Goldman Sachs 10,000 business program said that. So it's good to know. She's very well read, and that's probably what she's referring to.
She might have got it from there. But anyway, I just want to acknowledge Johnny. I connected with Johnny just recently, and he's already on the call here. So definitely, if you connect with Johnny, he's asking you to. So, and again, just appreciate Yolanda welcoming you on here, and she's been very active in the comments here. So I want everyone else to get active here, but we're going to keep things rolling here. So this is sort of related to kind of what you were speaking about before. It kind of digs in a little bit, right? And so type in #TellUs. And you kind of alluded to this, right? So tell us the connection between team first approach and the remarkable large increase in efficiencies at Zolay, right? How do you maintain and we kind of were touching on this, right? A freelance team's loyalty and engagement with this ethos.
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about documentation. So if we know that you're going to leave, if we know that you're going to go on vacation, we very specifically have a pro be sick, pro travel. We have a team member taking on a 1-month artist residency next year. We have team members that are pregnant. We have team members with disabilities who might have surprise sicknesses. All of those things mean that everyone has an understudy. So everyone has another person at the company that knows how to do their job. Everybody has documentation about their job, and everybody documents what they do. In that way, anyone can disappear and be okay. Social media is a tabloid. It's daily publishing, it's daily writing, it's daily art creation. And so with that tabloid nature, the pressure to be available is so incredibly high. And so not only is the agency culture inverse to balance and joy, but so is social media. So we're battling like 2 business formats that should make you go bananas, and hopefully through documentation and backup, ideally helping everyone be happier.
Great. Well, and all those things that you have in place are working obviously incredible. And now, a big buzz today, it's probably been around for a while, but I hear it more now than ever before. And that is the KPI, which is key performance indexes, right? And, indices, I guess, is the plural of it, right? So type in #KPI. And so, right, in a world of creative agencies, mood plays a crucial role. How does how do you manage the mood-driven creative work at Zolay, and has it affected your ability to exceed those KPIs by, I think you said 25%. It might have been larger. I forget what number you told me when over the phone.
Yeah, minimum of 34%. So I had
Great.
just done the math when you and I spoke. Our KPIs were exceeded by a minimum of 34%. The only one that wasn't exceeded was revenue by that amount, because I intentionally did not take business this year when I knew I'd be taking breaks. I didn't think it was fair. And so I actually took a pay cut so that we could get even more staff, to have even more process, and so that I had backup, which really, really worked. But you alluded to it. So creative work is creative, and creative work is personal. As much as we don't want it to be, everyone is your darling, right? And writers say kill your darlings. And a lot of creative work, Rob, I see you smiling. A lot of creative work is someone tearing your work apart, and even someone like ignorant about what you do, that thinks that because it's colors, they have expertise, because it's like one of the easiest things for them to critique, because it feels like the thing that they know how to do. Social media is a close second, because people think they run their own social media. And so all of this is very personal. You put a tiny, tiny part of you into each design, into each piece of copy. And we have people that really, really care about their work. We also have work that's like highly impactful. So we might be writing, we have an IVF AI client, in vitro fertilization artificial intelligence client. We have this education technology. We work with the United Nations. We work with human trafficking nonprofits. This can be very personal too. Like there can be some weight. And so having to retackle this can feel personal. So one of the things is that we use KPIs, we use numbers, right? Every single person, when I was in this Goldman Sachs program, I found out this was unique, but every single person looks at an Excel spreadsheet of every single client's 3 primary goals, and if they're achieving those, and they get a yellow, green, red. This comes from the OKR model, but clients understand the word KPI a little more often. So we use KPI, public facing. They see it. And I have had people reach me like, I don't want to have another red week. What do I do? And I always remind them, checking your KPIs weekly is like checking your stocks daily. It is very stressful. We do not tell our clients what they are every week, because they won't understand why there's a red week, but we need to know, because we need to know when it happens. But then I always have them step back. And this year I stepped them back and told them, you are at minimum 30% better than we even expected. We wanted to be 1% ahead of this already high expectation KPI, and you blew it out of the water. I think grounding people in the data, grounding people in good KPIs. We don't let dashboards teach us how to measure. We don't let dashboards teach us strategy. We have real intense strategy sessions. And then we remember that we have to kill our darlings. The last thing I'll say is barista mode. So this is something that I started saying. It's kind of an encouragement of resilience in our company. So let's say you're a barista and someone comes up to you and says, hello, I'd like whatever, a caramel macchiato with 20 pumps of caramel. You as a barista might say, well, I wanted to let you know that that will be expensive and very sweet. And that person says, I don't freaking care. Make me the caramel macchiato, right? Like, this is how this feels sometimes. And you go, yes, ma'am. And you make it and you hand it to them. And I can't tell you, this has really resonated with the team this year, barista mode, where I'm just like, turn on barista mode. Yes, ma'am, I will do as you say. Here's the thing, right? Because there's always a bigger picture behind the scenes about why your client wants that. And sometimes you're not going to be heard. And we're a service agency. So at the end of the day, provide the service, move on.
Yeah, I KPIs, when the analytics start coming out, that's when my brain starts short circuiting. I'm very much kind of like a free form, organic. If everything's organic, I do understand the importance of it, and processes are important to me. But as a brander, I used to be, before I was branding, I was doing design. I was selling design. And when you say personal, like, that's why I was smiling, because it is very personal, and design is subjective. It's like artwork. But the communication arts and design is meant to do something. It's communication, which is more science, and then arts is art. But, as a designer, I was like, well, how can I take my design, could be a logo, could be marketing collateral, and how do I help the client see its purpose and why it's going to work. But they just saw, I like this, I don't like that. So the reason I became a brander is because I discovered brand strategy and the strategy behind it. And like, kind of like what you're saying, when you take the strategy and you go, here's the strategy and here's the result we're going to get. Now, what we do following that is going to execute on that. You know, when I started doing that, it was like, okay, the design's 90%, approval. You yield on a few things because it's still very personal, right? Okay, we'll make that color blue a little darker because you hate lighter blue. It's kind of like that kind of thing. When they understand the strategy, everything you do will be understood in its context.
Yeah, and you establish your expertise. Something else that has really helped us is that. So all of our clients start with a full month of strategy. That's 2 weeks of just intake. And oftentimes we'll be asking them questions they haven't even considered. What are your company goals? How does that lead to marketing goals? How does that lead to digital marketing goals? And how are we going to push social media into all of those goals and push it all the way up? And so absolutely, like, we need to be a part of that. The other thing that we do is we end with a PDF with all of their creative decisions, their copy decisions, and all of these strategy decisions that we sign, because it's so easy to let this feeling every week take us away. Social media requires statistical significance, which is a minimum of 90 days. You haven't even tested something on social media without a certain number of impressions and a certain number of days. And so we make them commit to those days. And it's just like, it's just reminding people, like, yes, this one thing flopped. This one thing looks strange. It's a tabloid. We're pushing fast. We're pushing a lot. And we just have to keep this experiment going. And let's stick to what we all agreed was what we wanted to try to do. Let's stick with your expertise of your company and our expertise in what we know how to do, which is marketing and social media.
Awesome.
Well, I want to just, we're going to wind down here, but I got to just say one thing. And we're, all three of us come from the creative world, right? And it's so funny. And I just, not to date myself, but, when I was early on, we were doing T-squares, X-Acto blades. There was not the computer. I know I'm dating myself now. And everybody got, just like it is now with phones and photographs and video, right? Everyone is a photographer, a videographer. Everyone became a graphic designer once the graphic programs became much more mainstream, and it became so subjective. And back early on the day, you were an expert because you could just do this stuff, right? But then everyone got so, the technology, and it's the same thing. It's even worse today because everyone's an expert and it becomes so subjective. But I love what Rob said about strategy, and you were obviously saying it as well, Mandy. So that's great. But Rob, I'll turn it to you, sir.
Yeah. So, listen, audience, we're really happy that you guys tuned in to hear Mandy talk today, and just wonderful stuff coming from Mandy. But she's going to give you a free social media audit. I'm going to be putting it in the chat. You're going to want to reach out and get some of this done, because as you can hear, Mandy and her company work with some pretty great clients from many diverse backgrounds. And, that is the kind of thing that it's not very easy to do. And somebody, you can hear the analytics, you could hear the process, you can hear the strategy, and you also hear the heart. You could feel the heart too, which is the most important part. So I'm going to put in the comments now. Just plug into that link there, get your free audit from social media from Mandy. And thank you, Mandy, for providing that. Appreciate it.
We're just so appreciative of you, Mandy, coming in. Could you just give the community maybe a final word, and then the best way that you'd like them to reach you? But we appreciate you being on with us here.
Yeah, the final word I'll say is that being kind is expensive. So don't forget that it will hit your budget to be kind, but it is worth it. It is worth it in the long run for the way that you're going to feel, for the way that your team is going to feel. And additionally, you will get commitment. And I always tell folks that you will get the late night that you need, not the late nights that you want, but the team will decide, like, this is the moment that I need to dig my heels in. And that's not something that I ever expect, but it is a result that you'll see. And if you want to end your life, instead of taking a bunch of money to the grave, but end your life having created work that you're proud of and created a job for someone that you're proud of, take the hit budget wise. I really think, and what I found to be true so far is that it's worth all of that change.
Appreciate that's amazing. Appreciate that. That was great, Mandy. Again, we thank you for coming on. We're going to have you wait for us in the green room if you're good with that. And again, make sure to connect with Mandy. Mandy, best ways to LinkedIn, or what's the best way to reach you?
LinkedIn is great. I'm also obsessed with Threads right now. So come hang out with me on Threads. It is so fun over there.
Yeah. All right. Well, great having you on the show. All right. Robbie G?
Yeah. So listen, part of what makes this show great is the master connector himself. And what's not even so great about that is the fact that everybody loves a good overcoming story. The overcoming story is the thing we want to hear. It's why we root for the underdog. It's why we want to see people win who never won before. And Steve documents some of his thoughts, some of his strategies in his book, The Tao of a Master Connector. I'm going to put this in the comments. You're going to want to pick this book up, because what we're saying here is, people don't like people who are successful their entire lives. And this is Steve's story in a way. It's what he's learned overcoming. It's what he's learned through dyslexia and being bullied and being picked on, being introverted and so painfully shy, but yet taking some of his discipline and putting it towards the martial arts and succeeding, and putting it towards business and succeeding, putting it towards here and succeeding. You're going to want to get that book. Highly recommend it. It's going to make an impact in a lot of people's lives. Appreciate that, Steve. But you're on mute there, buddy. He's going to come off mute.
Muted on you. Okay, there we go. I appreciate it. Very humbling for you to say that. But yeah, we're on here because of you, community, and we're appreciative of, obviously, Mandy, but appreciative of you. Rob, I'm so thankful and blessed to have you as a co-host here. We are excited because next episode, we're going to be kicking off episode 143 next week, the 20th. Same bad time, same bad channel. The topic is you're indispensable when you're others focused. That's going to be amazing with Larry Kaufman. It's going to be an amazing show. And by the way, it's sponsored by our good friends Russ Hedge, who I'll be on his show this week coming up. But anyway, there'll be a link for that. Make sure you register. Tell your community, tell your friends about it. But we just appreciate everyone. And remember, listen, we live in a crazy world, right? So I believe it's our job, our responsibility to inspire people. Mandy was touching on it. She was talking about how, we can make an impact. And to me, the best way that we can impact people is to touch people's lives and, make them feel better. And whether you're writing a book, whether it's a post, or whether it's just a good word, just uplift somebody today. Do it. Don't think about it. I have a good friend of mine. I haven't done this regularly, but a good friend of mine, he sends love. Three different love messages, nothing crazy, right? But messages to people just to make them feel better. Just do that. Reach out to somebody today, because again, if our world is better, if we make people feel better, our world will be better. So we appreciate you, love you. We're gonna close out with a video, but looking forward to seeing you guys next week. And again, make sure to share this. If you're watching in the replay, type in #replay so we know that you're here. But just appreciate you, Rob. Thank you for all you do, and we'll see you guys next week.
Different's great, but being different for the sake of being different, I'm not a big fan of, right? If you just want to be different for the sake
technology
of it. But
increased, I would hide behind it.
And you start to hear some of their challenges, and yes,
because it speaks to the core of who you are and what drives you forward. Because what makes you different is what drives